So the other night I'm on some group, just I think it was just a regular sci-fi or comic group or something. I found myself on it, and of course the SJWs have infected that like a cancer as well. These critical theory fifth columnists who are sent out to become change agents and everything, and push the Marxist agenda into every hobby and everything you love. And the usual thing was Lovecraft was a racist, Lovecraft was this, Lovecraft was a monster, Lovecraft was evil, they should ban his books, they should blah 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 blah. Anyone who reads him is a Nazi, all this kind of stuff. Then one of these fuckers showed his first edition copies of H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds. And I was on him like a fucking vampire on a fucking a wound. I said politely, I said, hold on a second, you've been rallying against Lovecraft. Excuse me. You've been rallying against Lovecraft on another thread for being racist, this and that. Are you aware of how much worse H.G. Wells was? Oh, well, he just wouldn't take it. He just wouldn't take it. So let me explain to you about H.G. Wells. Firstly, Lovecraft wrote something like 80,000 letters. The racist stuff within those 80,000 letters would probably be about 1%, if even that. 99% has nothing to do with his racism or his bigotry or xenophobia. Same with his writing. It's a minor aspect. But of course, we live in an age where a cultural Marxist will zoom in on that and build your character according to it. H.P. Lovecraft's racism and bigotry, he was a saint. He was Mahatma Gandhi. He was Martin Luther King. He was Bono compared to H.G. Wells. H.G. Wells and this was the thing. The guy was saying Lovecraft's writing is dangerous. H.P. Lovecraft was a nobody. He lived in Providence. He died in relative obscurity. He had no social power. H.P. Lovecraft was one of the members of the founding members, or one of the members of the Fabian Society. He was up there with George Bernard Shaw and his imploring scientists to use a humane gas to kill the poor and the uneducated, who were a burden upon the aristocrats and the wealthy, and the royal families who supported them. H.G. Wells was a very powerful and influential figure during his time, and he was ferociously anti-Catholic. His anti-Catholicism was up there with the worst Orangemen you could imagine. He also believed that people should be only allowed to breed and exist if they have a university or a college education. He he placed humanity into two groups: uh, the humanity and what he called the base. The base was anyone who didn't have a college education or wasn't scientifically minded. So therefore, these people were to be, wait for it, put onto islands. Now, this was not like a fantasy he invented. He wrote letters and papers in the likes of the New Statesman and the Observer, and these would have been read out in Parliament in England, saying that it would be the best thing to do with these people would be put them on an island and leave them to die of starvation. This is what he was saying. Working class people were to be put on islands and left to die of starvation. The ones who survived, remember, like George Bernard Shaw was the same. He totally praised, and that's his best buddy in the Fabian Society. He totally praised Stalin's and Hitler's mass killings, and then later on retracted, said, "Yeah, they made a mistake of killing the wrong people. They just should have killed the working class." This is literally what these people were up to, and this is the power that they had. These had the ear of prime ministers, senior civil servants, and British royalty, and all the media, compared to Lovecraft, who had nothing, nothing. He was writing letters to friends. And Wells wanted people to be not allowed to pick marriage. Romance and love was to be abolished, and people were to be selected to be married based on genetic coding, or what they called pedigree. And everyone was to wear. These are all hardcore Marxists and socialists living in stately homes, of course, aristocrats, and they were to wear uniforms that were like overalls. And this is and if you read Wells's writings, they're filled with absolute hatred and contempt for anyone who isn't a member of the British Presbyterian aristocracy, making Lovecraft seem innocent by comparison. But what was more amazing about Wells is Wells had real powerful global reach and political power that not only went through things like the Fabian Society and the eugenics movement, but also things like Planned Parenthood and Margaret Sanger and all the rest of them in America. These people had real power that led to things, horrific things like poor people and black people in America being sterilized against their wills and will and stuff like this. And this guy who had the audacity to sit there pontificating about the wickedness of Lovecraft is then eulogizing the greatness of H.G. Wells. It's an unbelievable insight when you see how these people really think. So there's one for you. The next time someone, and you can look all this stuff up, I covered H.G. Wells' mentality in my book Valpurgis Night, and also you look that up now, and the greatest science fiction, and I have to say, Wells was a brilliant science fiction writer. There's no doubt about that. But the greatest science fiction writers are also shamans, or else they're magicians. It's not that they only predict the future, they may even be creating the future, whether it's Colin Wilson, whether it's with the space vampires, whether it's Arthur C. Clarke with everything, whether it's Lovecraft with everything, or H.G. Wells with his basically giving giving us the Extinction Rebellion of today. You remind people the next time that they go after Lovecraft how much worse H.G. Wells was. And also, unlike Lovecraft, H.G. Wells had real power. And this guy went mental, and I was thrown off the group. All I did was present facts, quotes. When they saw the George Bernard humane gas video off YouTube, instantly I'm called a conspiracy theorist, and that stuff is all taken out of conjecture. You really see how pernicious and vicious these lefties are. Um, they love compiling dossiers and things like that, and they're infecting everything in life. And you will find that their villains are often saints compared to their heroes. Take care. See ya.